patterns, permutations, time, rhythm, coordination, meter, concentration, tempo, modulation, groove. Welcome to the Drum Mantra Podcast. This is Rich Stitzel, and it's time to go deeper with your practice.
So what I did is, at some point I started realizing I can put in these sextuplets and make it sound essentially kind of faster than it is.
Polyrhythms, polymeters, what are they? How are they related? How are they different? Let's take a look. The way to be successful at something is you have to be so passionate about it that time disappears. You do not care. You are just in it. You can't wait to wake up because you get to start again. And when you go to sleep, you hope that you dream about it. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about passion.
Before I set up anything in a session, I try to find out, hey, what's the first song we're going to do? Can we go listen to it? Is there some kind of demo? And then, because I hate just throwing up any old cymbals and snare drum and whatever, building a kit and then going to listen to the song and go oh, well, I wouldn't use half the stuff that's up here.
What happens is you're moving the accents everywhere possible in a measure of 4/4, a measure of 3/4, and a measure of 5/4.
I really feel like that's a really underemphasized part of being a drummer, is getting sound.
So let's just hear what it sounds like to hear 3 16th notes at the same time as 4 16th notes. Hey, what's up everybody? Rich here. Welcome back to the Drum Mantra Podcast. I am actually in my car because this has been an insane week, and I'm actually driving to gig number 3 of the day, and I think it's like a 10 gig streak in 8-day kind of week for me. And that takes a lot of time. Driving to the gigs, playing the gigs, driving home from the gigs. But it's been a very cool week. I'm actually going to post. I tried to remember to take a picture of every different drum set that I played this week. A lot of times when I do these really crazy run around town playing gig kind of weeks, I make sure that there are different drum sets ready for me, like house kits or whatever. That way it's easier. I can just kind of roll in and play and then head back out. So I took a picture so far of every drum set, and then on Saturday or Sunday I'll try to post every drum set that I played this week. I think it's really cool actually to play different drum sets, different gear. It pushes the creativity for sure, and that kind of sums up my entire career. I've always been into playing different drum sets for the purpose. Sometimes it's because I'm lazy and I just want to use a house kit or something somewhere, but mostly I would like to change up my drums often just to push the creativity, just to kind of get out of my comfort zone and figure out a deeper or a new way to make music on the instrument. So I'm very accustomed to playing different kits, different pedals. And you know what? Actually, this just hit me. I had a teacher in St. Louis for a very short amount of time. I probably only took a few lessons from him. His name was Craig Williams. And I was in high school at the time. And I would go to his house, and he was a very... I kind of considered him eccentric at the time. But he was a session drummer, and this was in the 80s, so he was definitely a busy session drummer and a great player. And we would do the typical exercises like work out of the Gary Chester book or whatever, syncopation book, all the typical drum set books that you study when you're in high school. But he would do different things to kind of challenge me, and this could have been where this whole concept was born and kind of sunk into my way of being. Is I would get to the lesson, and the drum set that I was to play on would be set up in a strange way. So not necessarily the toms, but mainly where the placement of the ride cymbal and the hi-hat were could be in a very awkward place. Like he might, on purpose, put the hi-hat a foot further away than you would normally want to have it. And he'd put the ride cymbal where you had to really reach for it. And then I had to play all my exercises on the kit the way that it was set up. I wasn't allowed to move anything, and that was part of the way that he did my lessons. I don't know if he did those lessons like that with everybody, but that's what he did for me. So I would have to play the exercises on drum sets that were set up awkwardly and different each time. And another thing that he would do, this is all coming back to me, we would do, read the melodies in Gary Chester's book on the bass drum, but he would take the spring off of the bass drum pedal. So if you buried the beater into the head, then you had to reach down and put the beater back into position where it could be able to be played, because if there's no spring, it just goes straight up and it stays. So that was to learn how to allow the beater to bounce off the head, to actually start feeling the beater as if it were a stick. So that was a very frustrating exercise that I actually would go home and practice in preparation for my lessons. And man, that was grueling, because it never, you're in high school, you don't have a whole lot of time to practice every day, and to go through a frustration like that, I never mastered it, to be honest, but I tell you what, it sure started waking me up about thinking about how to play and the physics of how things move, and the idea that you don't have to be comfortable and everything be perfect to make music. And I think that was huge for me. I mean, that was 25 years ago, and it still has been part of me ever since. So how did I get on that? Oh yeah, because I'm playing a bunch of different drum sets all the time. So yeah, I played this morning, for instance. My first gig was at 6:30 this morning, and it was a jazz gig. The downbeat was 6:30. It was for this National Realtors Conference annual breakfast, I guess. This is the second year I did it. Jazz quartet, vibes, piano, bass and drums. And the vibe player, Stephen Leinard, was very kind and brought a drum set for me. So I got to play this really happening 1959 Slingerland kit, just a bass drum and snare drum and two Dream cymbals, which are very interesting. I've actually never played them, but they have these two cymbals had a really great tone, and they felt very comfortable. The whole drum set was very comfortable. So I played that kit, and then from there, that was over at 8:30, and then I rushed out to another gig out at Willow Creek, which is like the mega church, and I think it's the model of what every other mega church has been built on. But anyway, we were playing the employees' holiday party. I guess I could call it a Christmas party because it was Willow Creek. But yeah, we played this holiday party, and that's a huge production. It's like, I'm behind glass, and everything's mic'd, and we have in-ear monitors and talkbacks and lighting cues and everything that goes with a big mega church. But we were playing jazz. We were playing Christmas songs, and but I was playing on the house kit out in that actual. There's probably at least 3, but maybe more like 5 huge areas where they have full bands and full PAs and sound systems and all that stuff. So I was playing jazz on a 22 by 18 inch bass drum, 13-inch tom and a 16-inch tom, and a big deep snare drum and everything was tuned super low because, you know what it was? The drum set is, I think it's for like the teen worship band. And so, the teens, especially in churches, they love to tune everything really low, and they play everything really flat and low. And that's another thing. When I get behind a drum set that's not mine, I do not touch anything, because I want the challenge. I want to do it. Now, if I'm going to be playing for 4 or 5 hours, I might adjust some things just so I don't die at the end because my body's all out of whack. But if I'm playing for 90 minutes or whatever, I'm totally cool, and I love the challenge of not touching or changing anything, even changing the tunings. And I tell you, playing jazz on big tubby drums with a sub kick mic and everything, it was pretty weird, especially with in-ears. But I did it. It was fun. And then tonight I'm playing on one of my kits that a band carries, and that's going to be obviously comfortable. That's another 22 kick, 22 by 17 oak Yamaha, and I think a 12 and a 15-inch, the old oak style drums. But I'll also be doing an Ableton rig and dropping loops and samples into the band, and that's my normal gig. So tonight is a normal gig for me. But yeah, it's just playing all these different kits. What else? I could back up. I played one of my rigs this week was a cajon, and one of my different drum set. Anyway, I'll post the pictures of all the drums and try to say something thoughtful about the idea of getting out of your comfort zone and doing different things, being a musician instead of just a drummer, making music with whatever you have. So that's a big part. So anyway, it's been a very interesting and cool week. Busy. I didn't have to. I really enjoyed it, but I guess I could say have to as far as driving over an hour in Chicago rush hour traffic to get out to my daughter's Christmas concert yesterday. So I got to hear her play clarinet at the Christmas concert. That was great. And I've had a couple meetings this week. Sorry, I'm just kind of blabbing out what my week was like, but this is in lieu of me doing what I wanted to do, which was I also picked up the books today or last night. The primary series book is, right now I'm driving my car, and in the back there are 20 boxes of books. So that's very exciting. And my plan was for my podcast this Friday to be an overview and walking you through the first section of the book. I was going to play the play-alongs in real time, so you'd have access to be able to play along yourself if you have the book. The books will be shipping tomorrow morning, by the way. It's another thing I've got to put on my list after my gig tomorrow morning. But anyway, I didn't have time to do that because things have just been insane. And Tuesday, I kind of prepared. First of all, let me just tell you this. A lot of people talk to me about podcasts. I've only been doing my podcast for maybe 2 months. I'm 22 episodes in. And I was just talking to a buddy tonight, and I said, a podcast is not easy. It's like I'm trying to put them out once a week. And every Friday morning, and every Thursday I go, oh my gosh, it's Thursday. So I'm trying to get into a better habit, but it's like adding a whole new thing to the plate. And the podcast itself, I mean, when you listen to a podcast, it just sounds like someone's talking or you're having a conversation with somebody, and it flows really well and it's very smooth. But in reality, at least in my reality, a 2-hour-long phone conversation, for instance, last week when I talked to Blair Cinta, we talked for about 2 hours. And then I probably listened to our conversation 5 times and edited it down to 45-minute conversation. So that's like 10 hours of work to give you a 45-minute long podcast, just to tighten it up and make it flow well and make sure that things aren't in there that shouldn't be or whatever. But so yeah, it's a lot of time. And I didn't think about that in the beginning because I just get an idea and I go for it, and then I start trying to figure it out as trying to learn how to swim from jumping in the water is kind of a way that I like to do things. But Tuesday this week, a couple days ago, I had a very nice phone conversation with Carter McLean the day before he was heading out for his 2-week-long tour with Charlie Hunter on the West Coast, and we had an awesome talk, and that will be coming out next Friday. So definitely looking forward to releasing that conversation to everybody. Carter and I have been, very kind of outer acquaintances on social media for a while now. The occasional like on each other's posts, the occasional message here and there, but it was fun to get to know him. I mean, we really had a great talk. He's a very intelligent guy and super insightful and just a real kind of authentic person. So that was a lot of fun to talk to him, and I will be editing that this week, hopefully, and presenting that to everybody next Friday. So he'll be in the middle of his tour by then. We did talk about his preparations for the tour and everything, but I kind of figured that I'd wait. I think a podcast just came out with him a few days ago, so I wanted to put a little space between it for people who would really like to follow him, give a little break before they hear more. But anyway, it's been a crazy week. Concerts, picking up books, meetings, 9 or 10 gigs, podcast talk, and I don't know. And here's another thing. I really, really, really try to practice every day. And when I was in the process of finishing the book and writing all the play-alongs for the book, I was getting 2 to 4 hours of practice in pretty much every day. I'd probably go to my studio. My studio is very close to my house. I can walk there in about 30 seconds. So I would walk over in the morning, or I'd drop my daughter off at school, go straight there, practice for 90 minutes or so, write, etc. Chill, have lunch, and then go back again. I'd usually go like 2 to 3 times a day and practice for anywhere from like an hour to 90 minutes, 2 hours each time. So that's been a lot of fun. This week has been a different story, and it's always strange. I feel like on social media, you kind of see the best of people. Sometimes you get a little glimpse into someone's life where you go, oh, okay, they're real. They seem real. Like they're struggling with a thing that they're trying to learn to practice, or whatever. Oh, they're walking on the beach. Oh man, they don't only play drums, they actually take walks on the beach. That's cool. So, you see things every once in a while that gives you a glimpse into someone else's life that you go, oh, okay, they're not a machine that's in the studio practicing around the clock and filming exercises and being on tour and stuff. And I think it's important for all of us to realize that, I do it too. I see certain people that I like to check out on the socials, and if I'm not careful, I can fill the blanks in with my mind and kind of think that person is drumming and filming around the clock because it seems like it. And in a way, that definitely motivates me and inspires me to do more, to work more, to find the blank areas in my life where I can get to the studio and compose something and practice and stuff. And I think it's been amazing that social media has really stepped up the game for everybody as far as, it's kind of like sink or swim. You've got to practice. Everyone's practicing. I mean, how many drummers do you see with memes now on their page and it talks about practicing? Go practice. So we are in a crazy time right now with drumming, and everyone is practicing more than ever and filming and creating, and it's been incredible. But we all have to take a break and realize, and I've talked to many people, and everyone agrees on this, that we're all human, and everyone has to stop and eat A lot of people have jobs that they have to go to. I don't know how many musicians that I see on social media are actual professional musicians with gigs, but those are a different kind of group of people, a lucky group of people who are on their instrument all the time, which if you're one of those fortunate ones, make sure that you are grateful for that and know that it's a very special thing to be able to be a full-time professional musician. If you're an aspiring musician who wants to someday be a professional musician, I highly recommend reaching out and talking to some of the people who are doing it for real. And there are lots of them. So it's like I said, it's an interesting time. The older generations, which include me, of course, are, we've been, I've been a professional musician since 1990. So I've been a professional musician for longer than some of the people that follow and comment on my stuff have even been alive. I've actually been making a living playing, and I get messages from people who are 23 years old, and they want to they haven't gone through everything yet. And they might express frustration because they're not at where they think they should be, on a level they think they should be. And I tell you, it takes a lot of work. It takes, I guess, Gary Vee, who is a dude that I listen to his podcast a lot, he's always talking about the marathon. He's like, you've got to think about life as a marathon, not a sprint. And the older we get, the more patience we start to find in ourselves. And the younger we are, the more in a hurry we seem to be, because we want to be successful. We want to be, out there doing it. And things take time. I mean, you'll see if you're young, just keep at it. Keep at it. Network and be real. It's so important to be real. Don't try to fake your way into any situation, because the really great musicians will know that you're trying to fake your way into it. You might be able to fool someone that's new at it, but you gotta be cool, and you gotta be real. So do your homework and realize that if you're 23 years old, 25 years old, and you're still not quite, feeling like your career has taken off yet in music, just keep at it. Keep at it. Making the network, staying authentic, practicing, really learning the craft, and building a network is a lot easier nowadays because you can build it on a national and an international level. Whereas in the old days, if you were in a small town, you were kind of limited to the people in your town. Or if you're in a big city, there's an equal problem, because there's so many people that you might be around a whole lot more killing players than players that are in a small town, but there's also a million of you in a big city, so the competition's higher. There's a lot of philosophy behind being a successful musician, and understanding that is a lifelong journey as well. I don't know how I got on this, but what did I do? I don't even know. I'm just driving to my gig and blabbing. What else? What else should I talk about here? I feel like there were a couple other things on my mind that I wanted to bring up, but I don't know. The book is out. Okay, so the book, the primary series book, a lot of people want to know what this is, and people still wonder what the foundational series book is. The foundational series book is book number 1 under the name DrumMantra. And DrumMantra, basically a mantra is, in a meditation practice, you will have a mantra, which is like a series of syllables, usually Sanskrit, which are prayers, basically, I guess. And you would be given a mantra from your guru, and when you meditate, you would say the mantra over and over, or you would sing the mantra, and it's basically a big, long repetition of the syllables that would represent a prayer for you, and that would bring you into your meditative state. So I thought, well, what about repetitive rhythms? What if I created a system where you were playing rhythms that were interesting, that repeated, that would bring you into a meditative state? And I thought about this a lot, and like, how can this happen? What does this mean? Because I kept thinking, this is a long time ago. This is like 2005. I started thinking about this, and like, what part of drumming is very repetitive without any improvisation, like completely the same? I just got a phone call and I forgot where I was, but I think it was looking at what kind of drumming is repetitive but doesn't involve any kind of improvisation. So purely repetitive muscle memory. And I thought, well, pop gigs are probably the most repetitive that don't change. Like, you're playing a jazz gig. You're not just going to play the swing ride pattern and 2 and 4 on the hi-hat for 8 minutes without changing it. I mean, you could, and sometimes I've actually made that a goal, and it is not easy. Believe me, it is not easy to keep the energy and the spirit of the music alive without ever changing the pattern in jazz. But it's a great experiment, and I recommend trying it, at least for a song. But that's a whole different story. So, and there's a lot of stories attached to it that I can tell you, which I will at some point. But I thought, pop music, okay, it's like the rock beat, a dance song. You're going to play that for a long time, but that's not going to do any, that's not, I can't package that up into anything and kind of call it my own creation. And of course I didn't give it even a half a second of thought that I would try. But I started experimenting. I started thinking about what kind of grooves have kind of layering patterns that are interesting, that I know. And so, a couple that come to mind right away back then were the bossa nova. So the bossa nova has a set bass drum pattern, and then it has a very, I would call it, round clave pattern. And I started thinking about how that pattern, and I started thinking about clave. And clave is like this 2-bar phrase with tension and release. And there's a 3-side to the clave and a 2-side to the clave. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And so I started experimenting with the clave. This is a long time ago, way back in college. This was not 2005. This was like 1992. So I was playing clave with the left foot. This is what we all did at school. We all learned how to play clave with left foot, and then like Bayonne pattern, Songo pattern on the bass drum, and then do stick control with the hands, or read solos with the hands, or whatever, over these kind of more complex foot ostinatos. And so one day I remember practicing the clave and the Songo bass drum pattern, but then doing just 16th notes on the snare drum, or maybe I was doing, I don't remember. I was 16th notes for sure, but accenting different accent patterns. And I started accenting 3 every 3, like a dotted 8th note. And so it would be with the 3-side of the clave, and the next time the 3-side would come around, the accents on the snare would be 1 16th note off. And the next time you come around, the accents on the snare would be 2 16th notes off. And then the next time you come around to the clave, the snare drum accents are back with the 3-side of the clave. And so I started thinking, so there's this dotted note cycle extends beyond the 2-bar phrase of the clave. It's become a 6-measure long phrase. And then I started thinking about the idea of tension and release. Like clave has built-in tension and release. The 3-side is tension, the 2-side is release. And I thought, okay, the 3 sides, tension. That's a dotted note. So what happens if I play a dotted note for 3 measures? Well, that dotted note is tension that is swimming through like a measure of 4/4 time. The dotted 8th note is kind of curving and sliding its way through 3 measures of time, and that is creating rhythmic tension. Okay, fine. But what if the dotted note lasted longer than 3 measures? What if the dotted note was there the whole time, the entire time of a song? If it is, and then I started to discover that, so what I would do is I program dotted 8th notes into Reason. Now we're back in 2005. I would program dotted 8th notes for a very long period of time, like an hour. I'd stretch it out to last the loop to last an hour. And then I would play a quarter note and program that in and program that for that amount of time. Now I'm hearing a quarter note and a dotted 8th note together for an extended amount of time, like an hour. And I would put it on my iPod and walk around and listen to it for hours. And I started realizing that I can shift my attention from hearing the quarter note in 4/4 to hearing the dotted note in 12/8 to hearing the quarter note in 3/4 to hearing the dotted note in 9/8. And I'm like, okay, so where is the tension? Truly, where is the tension? Well, the tension is wherever you're not placing your attention. So that if you have 2 rhythms happening, 2 poly, and now I started to discover what are these? What are these called? They're not polyrhythms. They didn't fall into the polyrhythmic category exactly. They fell into the polymetric category, which means the same subdivision, different durations. So 4/16 note groupings and 3/16 note groupings. Those are 2 different durations of the same subdivision. So meter, polymeter. And I started realizing that you can hear things from different perspectives. You can hear 2 rhythms from several different vantage points. And depending on what you're focusing on, that thing that you're focusing on is the release, and the other sound is the tension. So by virtue of shifting your awareness, you could change what part of the polymeter is creating tension and what part of the polymeter is creating a release. It sounds fundamental, but it was kind of an eye-opening experience. I mean, we've all played that pattern. If you don't know that you've played that pattern, trust me, you probably have. I mean, it's a very common pattern. But to look at it at that depth, I never had done because I didn't have the opportunity to slow down in life enough to actually put something like that under the microscope. And to write it out for long enough to kind of observe the written out music to start having these realizations would be very difficult because the 4 different perspectives are written 4 different ways. So it would be hard to start gleaning that information from one way of writing it. So that wouldn't work. So the thing that made it possible for me is the technology, being able to program those 2 things into Reason and listening. So thank you, Reason. That's what started the fire. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is like a meditation. If I'm listening to these 2 things, and I'm forcing my mind to shift its focus to believe that different things are actually the main thing, but nothing has changed. This is a mental exercise. This is kind of like a meditation for drummers. And that's when the drum mantra was born. So for the next 10 years, I started experimenting with what does 5 sound like with 3 and 4, and what does 4 how long does it take for 3 and 5 to resolve if you're in 4/4? How long does it take to resolve if you're in 3/4? And just messing with the dotted note and the 5-note grouping, this just became this fascination for me. I did it with 7s for a while, but 7 becomes it's a pretty abstract figure. It lasts a long time. It lasts almost 2 quarter notes, and when you're looking at 16th notes of micro information, 2 quarter notes becomes a pretty vast spread of time. However, there will be drum mantra books that do involve the 7 down the line. So, Drum Mantra book number 1, the foundational series, is the beginning of building the foundation to be able to coordinate the body to even do these things. So everything is duple based in the foundational series, which means everything's divisible by 2. All the accents are on the downbeats, E's, ands, uhs. And there's just a series of permutations with the foot, 1 foot, and 16th notes on 1 surface with accents. It does it in 3/4, 4/4, and 5/4 time. And you go through basically every possible permutation. And I know when you look at a drum book, and it's drummers have come up with this idea forever. Come up with a pattern and do every permutation. I mean, that's a very common thing for drum teachers to do. But I decided to not just do all the permutations, but to create a structure to how they are performed, because we want to play things. The trick is, if you're playing downbeat accents, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're playing the downbeat with your bass drum, your mind is going to go, oh my God, I can do this. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to skip this one. Well, guess what? In the performance of the drum mantra exercises, you can't skip it. That one is just as important as the next one, which is downbeats on accents, and the bass drum moves to the E, etc., etc., etc. So there's a structure, and at first I liked just zoning out on the patterns. I thought, okay, this is cool. You just zone out on one of these patterns. You call it your mantra, and you just play it until you don't understand what's going on anymore. And then I realized, nope, that's not meditation. Meditation requires a constant waking up to the now and letting go of your thoughts. Waking up to the now, letting go of your thoughts. Being present, not thinking. Being present, not thinking. There's a system and a discipline involved in meditation. So I thought there has to be a system involved in the drum mantra. So I made it arbitrary. I just came up with a system, and the system is: you play the first measure 8 times, then the second measure 8 times. Each page has 8 measures on it. You play each exercise 8 times, and then you go back and play them each 4, each 2, and then each 1. And then you've done that page. It takes about 6 minutes to play a page. And there are 6 pages per section, and there are 3 sections in the book. So that is the foundational series. In the 3/4 section of the foundational series, there's a small hint at the dotted 8th note with the accents in the hands. And just 3 exercises just to kind of get your footing. And then in section 3, which is in 5/4, there's a small hint, only 1 exercise that introduces the 5-note grouping in the hands. So it's just scratching the surface just to give a hint of what's to come. And what's to come just came yesterday, the primary series book, which is out. The primary series book, I would call the foundational series beginner to intermediate level. It has challenged professionals. It's challenged myself. So when I say beginner, I mean you can strip a lot of things away from the book and use it not quite how it's intended, but it's a book that you can definitely get something out of as a beginner. As an intermediate student, you can use the book in its simplest form, and advanced players with book 1, the foundational series, you can change the stickings and it will just completely throw you on your ear. So the book is definitely accessible for all levels. The primary series, however, is definitely intermediate to advanced. The entire book is based on the 3/4 polymetric relationship and the 5/4 polymetric relationship, and how they function in 3/4, 4/4, and 5/4 time. There are 11 sections in this book, and there are also 6 rhythmic melody sections. So you are going very deep and uncovering every little stone. You're turning every stone in this book to get a very comprehensive physical mastery and muscle memory of these relationships. Now, the great thing about, if you're in 3/4 time and you're playing a dotted eighth note on the bass drum and you're going through a series of accent patterns with the hands, you can also memorize, say, the first measure of the entire book. Here's the first measure of the entire book. Da 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 da. You're in 3/4, 1E and a 2E and a 3E, and you're accenting downbeats, and the bass drum's playing dotted eights, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a. Okay, so that's all that's happening. So you play those two things together, and you memorize it because it's easy to memorize. And then you close the book. You don't look at the notation at all, and you start going through your process. I'm in 3/4. Now I'm going to try to hear it in 12/8. Now I'm going to try to hear it in 4/4. Now I'm going to try to hear it in 9/8. And you start shifting your awareness with exercise number 1. And I promise you, exercise number 1 all of a sudden becomes 3 hours of practice. One measure. And then you move to exercise number 2, you do the same thing. It is a rabbit hole, my friends. If that becomes easy and you want to venture into a different dimension of the book, start with the left hand. Do the stickings. There are 5 stickings. Right, left, right, left, right, and paradiddles. So the primary series is an advanced book for sure. Intermediate, upper level, intermediate to advanced. I'm super excited about it, and I know that it's going to be a slow burn because it's going to be a hard book, and it's going to be heavy for people. But I would love to share it with you, and I think that eventually, if you don't understand it or can't quite get it yet, that you will eventually, but it definitely takes attention, it definitely takes time. And the beauty of it is, it doesn't have anything to do with any kind of genre of music. It's not a jazz book, it's not a rock book, it's not a Latin book. It is a muscle memory, rhythmic training book, awareness of time book. It develops a inner sense of the possibilities of how time functions. So it's a totally different beast, right? There are play-alongs, however, and I compose all of them, and they are not any kind of genre, and that's always been my goal. I mean, I don't write in any genre. I write. Most of my compositions are based on the exercises from drum exercises that I compose. So the play-alongs are basically an extension of the exercise. The play-alongs are the exercise in musical form to just give you, a nice place to be while you're working on your muscle memory on these exercises. Woo! I'm almost to my gig, everybody. I've been talking for a long time. For those of you who know Chicago, I am on Lakeshore Drive, heading south. If I look out my driver's side window, I see the Ferris wheel at Navy Pier. The lake obviously is to my left, and the city is right. I'm in it, and I'm heading down to just the kind of the end of downtown before it kind of changes over. To me, the city sort of goes into the South Loop area around Roosevelt. I will be going to a building on Michigan Avenue, just a couple blocks north of Roosevelt, and I will be playing a corporate party with a 9-piece band of ridiculous Chicago musicians. So good, so lucky. I play with so many great players. If you're in a big city, there are remarkable musicians everywhere, but there are lots of them in big cities: LA, New York, Chicago, Dallas, Nashville. I'm sure other big cities. There's so many great musicians out there. That's your network. You should always try to network into the musicians that you feel are better than you. It's scary because it's hard for the ego to go, okay, I'm the worst person here, and I'm not talking about I'm the worst person here, I'm gonna make the band sound awful, but like, surround yourself with people who are super intense and passionate about what it is that they do with music, because they will inspire you to also be that way, and you might learn something from them. And here's another thing to think about. This is a philosophical thing, and then I'll probably leave you at that, because then I'm going to have to pay attention to parking and stuff. Think about this. Your experience, the people in your life, the experiences in your life, everything that is in your experience matches the resonance of your consciousness. Just think about that. Your experience, every single thing that you personally experience, is an exact reflection of your inner state of consciousness. So, if you're unhappy with your outer experience, look inside and try to figure out what it is that you're unhappy about with yourself. I know it might sound crazy to some of you, and some of you might nod your head yes, as in I'm saying the most obvious thing in the world. But I really think it's important for everyone to start realizing that just one level down from how you see the world is all atomic. We're talking about energy. And so our senses read things in a very limited way. It makes up the world we see, the people we see, the personalities and the emotions and all that stuff. All those things are just different energy levels moving around in harmony with whatever else is in that vicinity. And because it's your experience, you're kind of the orchestrator of that experience. And I'm not going to go crazy deep into this, because it can become a sliding slope of hypothetical concepts and stuff. But let me just say this from experience and from people who I've talked to that are the same. The higher you can raise your vibrational kind of output, which and what I mean is basically, high vibration stuff, being kind to each other, being intelligent, being thoughtful, being compassionate, having empathy. Those kinds of things resonate very high. The more that you can have of that in your experience, the more you will see harmony come out in your experience. And the other way is true too. If you have negative, dark thoughts, limited thoughts, etc. in your mind, you will see that in the world. You will see pain and violence and etc. Okay, I've already gotten too far. I probably won't even put this part in the podcast. But when you're building your network, build it from the deepest place of integrity that you can find within yourself, and you will have a solid experience in your life. Okay, I see the building I'm pulling into, so great talking to you. This podcast thing is totally new for me. Just talking out loud is a very strange thing, but I guess I signed up to do one, so here we are. Okay, enjoy. Happy practicing. If you're interested in either of the books, you can find them at my website, richstitzelmusic.com. And if you buy both the books, you get an automatic 20% discount on both books. So check that out, and look forward to the Carter McLean interview next week. Until then, take care. Happy practicing. And and have a good one. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Drum Mantra podcast. Your time and attention is much appreciated. I would love it if you went to the iTunes store and left a rating, and please share this with anybody that you think would like to go deeper with their practice. Take care.